Hello and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight series presented by the Black Podcasters Association, powered by Afros and Audio. This series is where we shine a spotlight on a Black podcast creative or professional within the podcast industry. My name is Corey Gums, and I am the founder as well as your host. But before we introduce our guest for today, please make sure you like this episode, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to tap the notification bell so that you can stay up to date with our newest content. And if you would like to learn more about the Black Podcasters Association, you can go to our website at https colon forward slash blackpodcastersassociation.com. Today, we would like to welcome Christine Job, the host of Flourish in the Foreign podcast. Christine Job is an award winning podcaster and business strategist that is currently based in Spain. Her award winning podcast, Flourish in the Foreign, celebrates, elevates, and affirms the voices and stories of Black women living and thriving abroad, while also exploring living abroad as a pathway to wellness. Flourish in the Foreign is the Black Podcasting Awards 2021 Best International Podcast Award winner as well. So it's a pleasure to have you here, Christine. I look forward to meeting you. The beauty of it is I could almost say we saved the best for last. This is our season finale episode. So thank you for being here. And as I like to introduce people, I always start with the first question, which is who are you and how did you get into podcasting?
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much, Corey, for having me. It is an honor to be the season finale. And oh my goodness, how did I get into podcasting? I moved abroad 5 years ago. And basically, ever since I've lived abroad and I've traveled extensively, I would run into fantastic Black women abroad. And they would tell me their amazing stories of how they traveled and they've done all these amazing things. And I just thought, this is really great for me because I'm getting like all this amazing stories and these interactions. But I felt like more people need to know about these women, and I wanted them to hear their stories. And then also, you know, I finally moved abroad 5 years ago, but I'd wanted to move abroad since I was like 17. And I just didn't have the models. There wasn't people, Black women, telling me how they did it. I couldn't really see it for myself. So, you know, when I moved, I started meeting these women, and I just started thinking like people should hear these stories. They should know about these women. I also had like some interesting encounters with white people abroad where they're like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "What are you doing here? I'm here living." So I knew it was important for our stories to be elevated and amplified, not for the mainstream gaze, but definitely so that mainstream curiosity wouldn't bastardize our stories. Because as I think we all know, history is defined by the victor. And across the world, you know, across the diaspora, our stories have been bastardized by other people. And I didn't want our stories as Black women abroad to be bastardized in that way. You know what I mean? It already is, where when we talk about Black migration, people assume that it has everything to do with struggle and strife, you know? And it's like, that's not always, and that's not the complete story. So I felt compelled to showcase these stories. And I launched the podcast 2 years ago, May 11th, 2020.
Oh,
Um, and it was crazy because I'd been listening to podcasts. I was definitely an avid podcast listener from way back when, you know, NPR. Like I grew up with NPR, you know, in the backseat of my mom's car. So I was familiar with the format and things like that. And I was really intimidated to enter into this space because I came in with zero. It felt like, you know, I didn't necessarily consider myself a creative, but I felt really passionate about showcasing these stories. And also, um, Spain was severely locked down during the first kind of wave of the pandemic. So I didn't have anything else to do. So I took that time to teach myself how to edit, how to put together a podcast, but also to connect with amazing women across the globe, Bangladesh and Japan and Singapore, and hear about their lives and their stories. And honestly, it was so fascinating to hear not only their stories, but the fact that the women were surprised that I wanted to hear them and I wanted to record them, right? They're like, why me? And I think that's also a symptom of, mainstream media emphasis on certain stories and not on others, where these women are just like, I'm just living my life. And it's like, yeah, and it's fabulous. It don't have to be, a story of Black women, resilience, or Black women got everybody on their back to be, a worthwhile story. It
Right.
could be a story about how you were abroad and you just live in life, how you went abroad for adventure, for love, on a whim, for a career, how it worked out, how it didn't work out, how it was cool, how it wasn't cool. Like, it could be whatever. It's worthy to be captured. It's so important to be captured, right? The voice is so important to be captured. So that is in a nutshell why I started Flourish more than 2 years ago.
Oh, that's amazing. I think, you mentioned about the storytelling, and one of the things that I really try to do. That's one of the motivations for this show is to show the world that the podcasters that are the Black podcasters that are out there, they just have so many different subject matters and so many things to talk about, so many different stories. Not It's not always the same stuff. It's not always about rap and hip hop or gossip or sports or, we have people out here who have very unique stories or very unique podcasts that need to be heard. So when we had the Facebook group when we started this last year, it was like, well, how do we help podcasters promote themselves from our community? And I was like, well, let's, a couple members said, let's do a live stream. So that's how it came in, and it's just evolved into, I guess, allowing people to tell their stories and and tell their journey in podcasting. So I really appreciate that. Now, one of the things when I was listening to your podcast this week, as I was learning more about what you do, um, I couldn't help, you know, you decided to move to Spain, right? You decided for whatever reason, you decided this is what I want to do. And I always think about like how scary something like that is, right? Like especially if you've never been there, right? I don't know if you've been to Spain or not previously, but if you've never been to a place and you decide you're going to go take a job there or move there for whatever reason, how did that help you? And like how was that experience?
Yeah, I think moving to a new country, sight unseen, is intense. I haven't done it. I've been to Spain many times, but I actually have several guests who are like, I've had guests move to Afghanistan sight unseen. They're like, yeah, that's what like these women are like, when you move to one country, you move to another. Like, there's some kind of foundational basics that you know. For me, choosing to move to Spain, I knew I wanted to live abroad since I was 17, but also I have to be frank with people. Like, I didn't grow up in a household where fear of the unknown was a thing.
Right.
Like, I just didn't. My father and my grandparents are immigrants from Trinidad, so that's in my blood. I always tell people on my mom's side, I come from a small nomadic tribe of women who are like, getting up and going ain't a thing. Like, so I don't come from a space where we are fearful of the unknown. I'm blessed because I didn't have any family members being like, aren't you afraid? Or aren't they racist? I'm like, I'm from Atlanta. Like, what are you talking about? So for me, and also, I've been traveling as an unpaid minor since I was like 4, and been internationally since I was 10. So I've been traveling. I studied abroad in Spain. In 2014, I walked the Camino de Santiago, which is a pilgrimage across Spain. It took me about 33 days. I just
Wow.
backpacked across Spain, um, kind of on a whim, kind of divine nudge. And that's what sealed the deal for me, is being like, I can do anything step by step. I can do anything. I can walk over 500 miles. It's step by step. Uh, and having that kind of exposure to Spain made me say, I wanna bet on this kind of experience. I gave myself 2 years. I've been here for 5 because I was like, you know, I like this lifestyle. Now look, moving to a country is a hassle. It is a hassle. And I think it's important for people to do it intentionally because that's the way to make it sustainable. And
Right.
that's the way for you to actually have the experience and evolve in the manner that you want to in a new situation. Because that's the beauty of living abroad is that it's different and it causes you to think differently about yourself and it causes you to put on a new value system perhaps it put on new lifestyle and see what is really true for yourself. So yeah, it's very scary. You move to a new country, you're not fluent in the language. Even though I minored in Spanish in college, I was like, yeah, I speak Spanish. And then I walked me into something else. I was like, girl, you don't speak Spanish. You don't speak no Spanish. And you move to a country, and you're like, what are they gonna think about me? And I think like most black people like black people, and that they're gonna hassle me. I didn't move from one place to go to another place and have somebody hassle me, which is completely justified. But besides that fear, uh, I just had to surrender to the experience. That's for me. I knew that I wanted something different from my life. I knew that I wanted to get off of the societal timeline of the States, especially being Southern, right? Like in the
Right.
South, getting married at like 18 and 21 is still like, that's fine. Or like waiting till after you finish grad school is like kind of pushing it, So they're like,
Right.
go
Right.
ahead and get married. I wanted to be somewhere else, try on different kind of values, really see what what it was that I valued, right? Because I think America does a really great job of propaganda and programming. So much so that you idolize and aspire to things, but it's like, is that you? Or is that just what it means to be successful, to be respectable in this country? What is it that you want? And I think that's what's so beautiful about being abroad. So it is scary. You're far away from your friends and your family. You gotta make friends. I'm an introvert, so it's like actually you gotta leave the house, like go out and make friends. But the benefits outweigh that fear. And then you recognize like, wow, I'm doing it. And then you're like, oh, I can do anything. And then you get cocky. You're like, I can do anything. It's our podcast, I live abroad, so
I was gonna say that. So that no fear, is that what you brought to when you decided you wanted to do the podcast? Because I know for some people it's intimidating. I help people develop and build their podcast. So sometimes you got to hold a person by the hand and walk them through the steps. Other people are just ready to jump in the water and just sink or swim. Was that how you were raised, and that no fear, and that experience you of moving to another country? Was that just like you just overcame that when you said, I'm just going to do a podcast?
no. Actually, I was scared to death. I was scared of judgment, right? Because my background is actually in law. So like I was just like, what are people gonna think about me? I'm like, I've gone so rogue, like
Hmm.
while everybody was studying for the bar exam, I was on a business trade mission to Namibia and South Africa. Like I went to startups, like I went to entrepreneurship. Like at some point I was just like, wow, are you ever gonna you know, do right, go back to like what everybody else is doing. It's like, no. So I actually had a lot of fear about judgment. I really did. I was just like, and I think also because I'm a bit of a perfectionist and I hate sucking. And it's like when you're a complete novice, you're gonna suck. Like that's just how it works. You don't know what you're doing. Like get over it. And so I was really blessed to have an accountability partner who wasn't even in podcasting. She was just like, all right, like I'm just gonna keep you in line. And she insisted that I set a launch date and that I had a party on the launch date and I invited my guests to the launch date so that I would actually do it. Because I think you get kind of stuck in analysis paralysis sometimes with podcasting or with anything. So
Right.
I definitely had fear for sure. But then, you know, um, you launch it, you're like, is anyone gonna listen? My mom's like, I listened to it. I told my friends. I'm like, okay, mom. Like anyone else
Mom
could listen to a
always
podcast,
been a mom. Mom's
right?
yeah.
But then, but then I start getting feedback from the podcast. The podcast starts growing. People start emailing, DMing me, saying like, "This is changing my life. I'm gonna move to Japan. I'm gonna move here." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And that for me has been all the difference because it's for me it switches from curiosity and me being like nervous and anxious to service. It's not about me anymore. It's
Right.
about elevating these stories. It's about other Black women seeing themselves, hearing themselves. It's about even non-Black people being like, didn't, I didn't consider this, right? Because it's not a story that is being elevated. So if you go online and you hear about people living abroad, especially I think before now there's been like a surge of Black and abroad kind of media. You might just get Brad and Becky on a beach. And that's not the whole story, right? That's the
Right.
amazing thing about telling diverse stories is that people can see different perspectives and different ways of living and different concerns that come up and maybe even more relatable. So for me, I definitely had fear, but I'm really blessed to have a solid group of friends and family that hold me to the fire. I'm like, no, girl, you're gonna do this. You're gonna launch it. Because, like, let me be honest. I started recording in March of 2020, and like by mid-April, I don't think I had launched the trailer yet. And they're like, no, girl, you're not gonna record all these people and not do anything with it. You're gonna put it out, and that was really, really helpful. That added a little push, and now it's off to the races. So
That's dope. So when you first started, you both recorded all your episodes, or you were doing it as you were going along?
I both recorded, and I over both recorded because I didn't think anybody was gonna say yes. So I had been doing research. So I started recording in March, but I started doing research like in 2019.
Right.
I was following people, following on YouTube, on Instagram, researching. I had a whole list. I've been watching them from a distance. And so when I finally, I actually recorded with my one of my best friends. She lives in the Netherlands. She used to live in Spain. So she was my test, and I had a great time. So I was like, okay, I could do this. And so then I put together my little template, my pitch template, and I pitched like 30 people, and like 80% were like, yeah. And I was like, wait, what? Like, what? And so I scheduled them, and I was like, okay, not everyone's gonna do it. Of course, people flake and stuff like that. But I bulk recorded. By the time I launched in May, I mean, I definitely had probably 20 raw recordings. Like and I was still recording too, because people were like, oh yeah, 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 yeah. And I was like, I didn't want to say no to anybody because I was like, I don't know how long it's gonna last. And so yeah, I bulked, and it was crazy because I think I stopped recording for season one in I think maybe October 2020. So I started recording in March. I was kind of recording like every week,
Hmm.
maybe multiple people till October 2020. And I had enough episodes. I had like 55 episodes with guests, I think. So it's intense. It was. I
And
don't recommend doing that
and I'm up here,
because then people are
and I was
like,
complaining last year about me doing twice a week, doing 26 episodes on this show. So look. Anytime somebody tells me they do something like that, I give you a round of applause because that is not an easy thing to do. It's especially if you have other things going on, that you're trying to do. You have your business, and you have your personal life and juggling all that stuff. But I think that's amazing. And when you were talking about, how people responded to you, it made me think about like you hear a lot of travel. There's a lot of travel podcasts out there, but I have I don't think I've seen or really heard too many about, I don't know. Do you consider yourself an expat?
expat immigrant for
Yeah.
me,
You don't
it
hear
is.
about too many. Black women expats podcast dedicated to living or working abroad. So um I could see why people would be willing to jump. Like you said earlier, people have stories to tell and experiences they want to share, and it's like, well, finally somebody's out here giving us a platform to do it. So sometimes we don't think about it in the moment we're planning it. The self-doubt comes in, the normal human fears that happen, that you have to overcome. But I think that's so dope. That work ethic must have been crazy, especially if you were doing everything yourself, right?
I did everything myself. But also that's why, burnout is real. I don't think I
Yes.
was burnt out, but like I went seasonal and I definitely paced myself this year, much to the chagrin of my audience, because they're like, no, girl, we need that. We need that in the veins. But I'm like, I'm in the process of launching a new podcast website, some products, some other stuff, getting help. I'm like, y'all, because a big aspect of the podcast is about living abroad as a pathway to wellness. And I have to let them know, I'm like, I live in Spain. I'm trying to live that Spanish life. You know what I mean? I know y'all want these episodes, especially at the rate that I was cranking them, but I was like, look, ladies, I'm trying to walk the talk. So I gotta pause. I
Right.
gotta take a break, I gotta take a break. I gotta get help, I gotta get help. It is what it is. But I'm really blessed because my audience really F's with me. Like they really do. And so I don't really worry about that because they're always there and they're always like ready whenever the episodes are ready. Because it's really, really intense. As you know, to do it all yourself and to crank it and have that kind of consistency is pretty tough, but it's well worth it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when I was looking at your site, you had some really good topics, and you had some really interesting guests. And when I was listening to the episode you had about just like living abroad, where it was well produced. I could say that much. So all this research and practice you did very well. So, but that episode, I was like, okay, let me check out this one because it's always been in the back of my mind. What if I lived abroad? What if I decided to leave the U.S.? My kids are getting older now, so it's like, what if, like, even like my family has property in Puerto Rico, even though it's not living like in Europe, but it's still a whole nother experience. And I'm think, okay, well, maybe I could take over one of the properties and live remotely, and do my work remotely now from there and enjoy myself. But I was listening to the episode and I was like, wow, like you gave so many unique perspectives in that. And I liked how you led up to with the content that you were putting into your podcast. So I know it's more designated for Black women, but I was listening to it. And I was like, no, no, this stuff here I could learn about, what it's like to work and live across seas. So I think that's great. We haven't even started talking about your podcast. So let's talk about Flourish in the Foreign. What is the podcast about? What can people expect from it? What can they learn from your podcast?
Yeah, Flourish Move Forward is all about celebrating, elevating the voices and stories of Black women across the diaspora from any country who live and thrive abroad. And it's really about examining their journey, but also how is living abroad a pathway to wellness. And here, wellness is not just crystals and bath bombs. Um, Wellness can't be that for Black women. You know what I mean? I have crystals and I have bath bombs. I enjoy them. Yes. But for us, no matter where you are from, across the diaspora, wellness means something more. It just does because of history. And so I was really, really intrigued to examine that. How do you get to thriving? How does living outside of your home country, your cultural context, actually aid in your fulfillment, right? Like when I talk about wellness, I'm talking about professional wellness, financial wellness, mental, physical, emotional wellness. And to pose that kind of question to these women, some of the women have thought about it deeply, some of them haven't. And so they're like, let me think about it for a second. And I think it's something that I wanted to have that kind of conversation um, deeply about wellness, not just about like, you know, Black women are not just strong and, I wanted I wanted to take it from a space of intentionality, of women who are betting on themselves, who are going on these adventures, because it is an adventure. Like, you don't know what's gonna happen. It could be cool, it could be not. And what are they learning? What are they learning about themselves, about what they really need, what they desire and require? What does that look like, right? Like,
Mhm.
what do you learn? And how does that influence how you live your life? That's what Flourish and Foreign is about. So what you're going to get is you're going to get amazing stories about these brilliant women, because everybody's just brilliant. And if you go to the show notes, everybody's fine too. And I'm like, I don't even know how that happened. Everybody's fine. Everybody's just beautiful and brilliant. Um, but like, you're gonna get these stories of their origin story, right? Like, how did they come to even think that living abroad is an option for them? And you're gonna hear so many different pathways, which I think is what's so beautiful, because I think there's something for everyone. I have women who are diplomats, and I have women who went to study abroad in high school, or even uh, younger than that. Some women never studied abroad, never went to college. There's all these different pathways, right? Some people didn't tell their family until they were in the airport, and people were like, "What's that noise?" Like, yeah, that's my gate. I'm leaving the country, just to let you know. Bye. And then people who have really supportive families. That's what you're gonna get, are these amazing different like origin stories, but you're also gonna get how they navigate their blackness, their womanhood abroad, which is not at all the same, right? There are so many different ways of relating to blackness and womanhood. It's fascinating. I think it's always especially fascinating when I speak to women from the continent, and how they relate to blackness, right? Because you know you're on a black continent, so everybody black. So it's not the same way as perhaps as a Black American relates to blackness, and how does that affect you know how they are perceived and received in places, and how they experience that, right? Because there is so many different. I think there's so many different ways to interpret it. So when people ask, like, is some place racist or some place is not, and da, 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 it really is about who you ask and how they see and relate to their blackness and their identity as to what is discriminatory or offensive and all these types of things. So I think that's really fascinating for people to learn. And then also, we do dive deep into wellness. It's something that I want anyone who listens to the podcast to contemplate on, because I do believe that Western society, specifically American society, is built in such a way where you don't have time to contemplate, and they want it that way. Because if you start contemplating, you might be like, wait a minute, like this ain't all that it's cracked up to be, right? So I want to have those discussions about wellness. I want to have these women really discuss how their life has changed, and I want them to feel. I want them to feel affirmed. Very similar in the vein of one of my favorite. It's not a podcast, but I guess StoryCorps. By NPR. These amazing stories that people record that affect and resonate with so many people. It's really important that these women are affirmed in that way as well, and that they are, right? So they hear themselves. So some of them are like very nervous, like, I don't want to listen to myself. They have their mom listen, or they have their friend listen. They finally listen, and they're like, whoa, like, I really am doing it. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
they are affirmed in such a profound way. You're gonna get all of that, and you're gonna meet so many amazing women all around the world. Follow them, listen to them, you know, uh, see their businesses and what they've built. So that's what you're gonna get from the podcast. A lot of dope Black women who are just doing the damn thing while looking great abroad.
That's part of the wellness part too, right?
Hey, that is something, right? These women be looking just moisturized and beautiful, because for whatever reason, maybe it's the lifestyle. You know, they have siesta like here in Spain, where I'm like, kicking it. You know, it's great. Or, you know, they live in a lifestyle where they have help and they can afford to have lots and lots of help around. You're like, this is great. Or, you know, maybe they're in Thailand where Thailand's dope, where you can have massages all day long, you know, for like anywhere from like $4 to maybe $20 for a luxury experience. You know, like they are nurturing themselves and they're getting to know themselves outside of their societal context. I think it's important to acknowledge that, you know, as a Black woman, there is a lot of societal mm, pressure or expectations, no matter where you grow up around the world, about who you are, who you should be, what it means to be a good Black woman, what you should aspire to, who you should, you know, display yourself for, and how you should do it. And being outside of your cultural context does free you. I always tell people because, you know, you're a foreigner and you're always going to be other. Even if you go to the continent, like, I think that's a whole conversation. A lot of people don't recognize, a lot of Black Americans are like, I'm just going to go to Ghana and it's going to be whatever. It's like, but you're not Ghanaian. It doesn't mean that they're not going to embrace you or they're not going to be, you know, they're going to be cruel to you, but like, you are going to be othered. And instead of resisting it, embrace it. Because what that does is that you're outside of your societal context and outside of maybe those norms or expectations. You're also in a society where they're not expecting you to do what they do because you're a foreigner. Like, obviously, you're respectful, but like, they don't have those kind of expectations. So you're in this gap that's
Right.
really fertile if you are intentional to invent yourself, to experiment, to decide who you really are and what you're really about and what you really want in this life. And that is life changing and also contributes to the less stress and the glow because you get to play in a way that maybe you haven't before.
Right. You don't have those pressures that you might have here in America, even when you're just chilling, right? Like sitting. I was outside last night talking to my friend, and the police just keep driving up and down the block, and I'm like, oh man, here we go, right? Like, don't do this tonight. So you don't have like those kind of experiences. I think you said something that was important though, and I think it was dope. It's good inspiration. It's like you're in that gap, and the perspective is a lot of us would be in those situations feeling feeling like outsiders or feeling like, well, especially if we go to Africa, like I'm here, you're expecting people to embrace you, and they're like, hey, what's up, thanks for being here, but you're not one, you're still technically not one of us, and there are a lot of cultural differences and stuff. I live in New York, so I get to see and I get to experience some of the cultural differences, because it's just like a melting pot here, but not a lot of people from other places in the country have access to that, so it's a whole big other learning curve for them. But I think that applies also here in podcasting, right? And I think it's important for us as Black podcasters to understand that you don't I think you said be comfortable who you are, and I think that's the most
Yeah.
important thing: your blackness and how you define yourself, and that will lead your voice in this space, which is one of the things I really try to encourage in the association with our members. Is like, we're not a monolith. We have different experiences, different perspectives. We come from different even here in America, we come from different places in America, different parts of the world, different influences. So, and I think I really want the world to hear and see that. So that's why it's really great what you're doing. We have Dominic Lawson. Hey, Dominic, he's one of our members. He said, Christine, thank you for being a trailblazer and being in the space and being in the travel space with your podcast. So, I mean,
That's so nice.
yeah,
Thank you,
it's
Dominic.
I mean, like I said, when I was going through your website and I'm looking at the different, it's almost like, which one do I pick? Like, I'm sitting here like, because I've had very limited window. I picked the one about living abroad that was very broad. I wanted to see what that was about, but I was looking at some of them and I'm looking at the areas people living in, and I'm like, wow, like this is dope. You have people living it. It's funny. I saw the one with I'm looking at it now, becoming a wine professional Lisbon, which is funny because one of my friends, she was talking about this summer she wants to go to Portugal and to do like a work thing there. And I was like, you need to listen to this podcast. And I sent her the link to it.
Ooh.
I was like, she's got a couple episodes on here with people living in Portugal. Check those out. You see, so you can learn more about it. So see, it's a great resource as well. It's not just about the
I
stories.
think I think so too. Look, and these stories are not all rosy, okay? Like it's not an IG inspo thing. This is not Pinterest vision board. This is real life. And we're talking about real things that are happening. I mean, check out Dating Abroad. I have Dating Abroad Part 1, Part 2, which are actually like two of the most popular episodes. And look, it ain't all roses, right? But it's important to know those are kind of experiences. It's important. It's important to see how life is lived. Just
Mhm.
because it ain't all, I don't know. It's not Pollyanna. Like you live abroad, I live in Spain. I still wash dishes. Like I don't know what it is. Like this is my first apartment that I actually had a dishwasher because like dishwasher, I don't have a clothes dryer. That's not a really big thing in Europe, especially in the Mediterranean. Like let's get real about it, and let's not romanticize. Let's not play in escapism. Like let's be real because the thing is for me, I think that our reality is good. Like I don't think we gotta like falsify. I don't think we got to sugarcoat. I think our realities abroad and these experiences abroad are amazing. And I also think it does us a disservice for people who do want to go abroad to paint a picture like it's not. Like it's all fine. That's why I ask in the majority of my episodes. I'm like, what is it like being a black woman where you live? What is it like for you? Especially talking about dating. I'm like, you being fetishized, like, well, how do you feel about it? Right? Because that's the thing, people want to go abroad and they want to date. They think they have better prospects and things like that. Which, hey, I've had people on my show that have a whole philosophy about like, depending on who you are, what you look like as a black woman, where you should go in the world, and how you should approach it. She has a whole theory. It was very provocative, as you can imagine. People had lots of things to say. But like, you know what I mean? Like, not everything is gonna be, moving abroad is not a balm to whatever ails you. That's the thing, right?
Yes.
I want to showcase that. That's the thing about the wellness, like living abroad, moving to Niger. I've had guests who moved from Bangladesh to Niger. I've had people move all around the continent. Like arriving onto the continent, people are not going to be waiting for you at the airport with their hands open, just being like, let me heal you, let me fix you. It doesn't work like that. So it's important for us to show that, right? It's important for people to get those real stories and to take some accountability for their life and their experience.
Mhm.
That's the biggest thing. I want people to be inspired. But I want them to feel empowered, like they could do it. Like shit may go sideways, but you'll be all right. Like I've had people on my show who've moved from Honduras to Mexico to Kuwait to China back to Mexico. Had crazy stories for all those, but it wasn't like, oh, I failed, I go back to the States. It was like, I'm going to keep on getting to know myself and figure out what I want. That's the point. That's the point. It's not that, come to Spain, everything's gonna be great. No. you know, I'm not sure if there's a utopia for black people. Like one place that's a utopia for black people. Like there's what kind of don't exist. So it's important for people to have this kind of expectations, to see themselves all over the globe, but also to feel empowered, to explore and to figure it out for themselves.
That's dope. So when you first started, what was one of your biggest frustrations? What was one of the or mistakes that you made that you had to really work hard to get through?
Learning how to edit, that's a big one.
I think that's
But
all of
I
us.
don't, right? I learned it on Descript, and Descript really is my jam. Like I like that visual component that helps a lot. But I think also like expecting a podcast to like blow like immediately, or I get a really big guest because I've had guests who have huge followings on Instagram, YouTube, stuff like that, podcast goes. Maybe they promote it, maybe they don't. That's another thing. Like, they gonna promote it or not. Um, and it doesn't do what I think it was gonna do. I thought it was gonna be like, this is gonna drop and everybody's gonna know my name. No, it doesn't happen like that.
Right.
I think that's the biggest mistake is to expect it um, to pop off. You have to be consistent with it, but also you got to get to know your audience. And you only really get to know your audience when you're in conversation with your audience and you create a space that they feel like they can talk to you. And that's been a really big thing for me. Have a newsletter, my email, they slide into my DMs all the time. They know they can talk to me,
Right.
like they know that they can get to know me, and so I can provide content that would be interesting to them. So, the podcast popped, with dating abroad compilations. People, and not when it dropped, the first one, actually. The first one dropped early last year. It didn't pop. It had like this crazy surge in August. And I was like trying to scour the internet, like, who said something? What happened? I don't know. That's the biggest mistake I think is I don't know, expecting it to
Yeah.
pop, expecting to get sponsorships or monetize right away, even though there's different. I monetize pretty quickly, but like it's you know it's a whole situation. you know,
Yeah.
you gotta be strategic about it. So
So for all you guys watching and listening, you heard what she said. It doesn't matter what continent you're on. It's the same problem we all have as podcasters. I just want to throw that out there because you started it when you were out there in Spain. It's a whole different culture, whole different attitude out there, and you still have the same issue that a lot of podcasters here in the States have. So it's a universal thing, and I think one of my things is managing expectations, something I definitely talk about a lot, and people will hear that from me a lot, and that is part of the thing of like building it and getting this, myself included. Like I'm working on a podcast. Hopefully, I'm like I was glad the show's kind of in the season finale, so I can now take that time and work on my podcast that I want to do. It's a local podcast for out here in Queens, but um and you have to check yourself sometimes, like, oh, this is gonna blow up, it's nobody doing it, and sponsors and this and the other, and it's like, well, hold on, let's just start with step one first, and then let's work our way towards whatever the plan is. But I really do, I think that's very important of managing expectations, and and it's like that too, like, like even here on YouTube with some of these episodes, and some of the episodes, I'm like, oh, this is really, this was a really good episode. This was a really good interview. And I'll get like 12 views on it. And then I have other ones that have like 400 views on it. And I'm like, but that one was like kind of like that to me, it wasn't that great, but you get those surges, right? Like like YouTube will send me an email like your thing is doing so well, or you're getting this much views. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, how did that happen? Because I wasn't promoting it. So, but that's always a good thing, and you got to capitalize on that. My question I have for you too is, you mentioned your engagement, right?
yeah.
Um, how what have you put in place to like really make yourself more engaging to your audience?
Oh gosh, I've done so much. I interview all the time. When I first launched, I was in Facebook groups that were about living abroad, and I was just there as a resource. I don't really do that really anymore because I don't have the time for that.
Hmm.
But I also did something that I think I'm going to start doing again. When people started following me on Instagram, I used to drop them voice notes. And I just be like, thanks for following and thanks for listening, and I really appreciate it. People love that. I mean, so I think I would say like maybe 90% of people like it. Maybe 10% of people like, this is weird.
Yeah, you're
Because
not
voice
used to
notes
that.
are really, right? Because voice notes are really intimate too. But podcasting is really intimate. So I was like, I'm not, I also have like no shame. So I was like, I'm okay. like, so I think that was big because people were like, whoa, thanks. This is cool. Like, I really love your podcast, and you just like drop this. And I told one of my friends, I binged your podcast. My podcast is an hour long. I binged it this weekend. I'm like, what? Like I try to do that. I used to do a lot of IG lives. I'll probably go back to doing that. I used to do a lot more like YouTube. I just used to be available. to people and just feel like I'm here for you. And that is a big thing. I think people gravitate towards my sincerity. Like I'm like, I don't want you out here struggling. I don't want that for you.
Right.
And I don't want you to get bad advice because there's plenty of that on the internet. A lot of crazy advice, especially some of these Facebook groups. I'm like, don't listen to any of these people. They will have you arrested. Don't listen to these people, you know? So being a resource, that helps with engagement. But also, my Instagram stories are usually chock full of like inspo, and people really love my Instagram stories. So my Instagram stories, they'll be real estate from all around the world. There'll be uh, language like reels. There'll be, black women traveling. There'll be all different kind of inspo. People like that kind of stuff. They like that kind of vibe. So it's all kind of hit or miss. You got to be able to try and experiment to see what people really enjoy. But like my Instagram stories, typically every week I have someone always messaging me saying, "I love your Instagram stories. It gives me so much inspiration." And I feel like even when I'm not dropping episodes, right? So people are like, I sent to my friend, I told her she has to follow you or whatever. I don't even have that many IG followers, which is also a thing that people have to like really check themselves. Like my downloads are consistent, my subscribers are consistent, but look, my IG following isn't like large, but I got engagement. Like people like me. You know what I mean? Like they like the stuff. So you have to give yourself the time to learn your audience for your audience to learn you. And that takes work. And you need to be available. And you got to see what's going to work for you. Like right now, I'm really interested in Pinterest. I'm really trying to figure out how try to pay
So
someone to get into Pinterest for the podcast, right? Because it's perfect for my demographic. Women, Pinterest, discoverability, searching, living abroad. Like that I would probably do really, really well there. So
do you know
you got to
Twyla,
invest in it.
do you know Twyla Dang?
I follow her on Twitter, and I
She
think on
I don't know
LinkedIn.
if you on Twitter. She just recently talked about she did a talk on about Pinterest. So I don't know if you saw that, but go on her feed and check that out if you haven't already.
I
'Cause
will
I didn't
definitely.
Till I saw that, I didn't even think about like I've never been a big person in Pinterest. I've gone on Pinterest when I was looking for inspiration. I had a client that I was working on putting his EPK together, and I was like, well, it kept sending me to Pinterest, so I was like, okay, well, I'll go there. But I've never really understood how to use them. But apparently, it's from what she was saying, it works for a lot for some. It works depending on your niche. But you said about engagement in Instagram, and I think you're a good example of when they talk about niche down, right? You don't need a large audience to be successful in what you're doing. You need to find a specific niche that meets the specific needs of a specific audience. So, this whole conversation has been inspirational. You've been dropping some jewels on the low, So I hope people are listening and watching and understand that when you hear other people are talking about it, you're witnessing it right here in this conversation of someone who is niche down, who doesn't have a huge Instagram following, was being very successful with it in regards to engagement, who's monetizing and whose show has slowly been growing, but it's growing, and building a very strong foundation in regard instead of just you wake up one morning, you have 50,000 downloads and then it disappears because you were on Apple's or Spotify's, hot podcast of the day. But it's been a consistent, slow grind of just building a very well engaged audience. So
That's the thing. I think more people need to niche. You have to, because the thing is that you can't be everything for everyone. And quite frankly, like I know my demographic really well. My demographic are like 30 to about 50 years old women. They're highly educated. They usually have 2 degrees. They're mid-career, senior professionals. And when they travel, they're not staying in hospitals. They're like, nope, when they stay in a hotel, they're kind of even iffy on Airbnbs. And when they talk about living abroad, they're not trying to live abroad, with a backpack. They're like, I want to live a nice life. I know my demographic, right? I know them, I understand them, but that takes time to really understand. And you can't understand your audience if you don't niche, right? Like you can't, like there's so much content, there's so many things that you could say, but how do you even test for it, right?
Right.
How can you even ask anyone? Like, you need to be specific about who you're talking to. Because the thing is like, you don't exclude people. I think a lot of people are worried about excluding people. I'm not. I'm like, this is for us, by us, Black women, amplified. These are our stories. Get it. And I get people all the time. I have a course that I launched last year. I'm like, I'm not a Black woman. Can I join your course? Yes, you can. If you resonate with the podcast, come on. That means you're not gonna come at me with some craziness or some foolishness. You already know what it is. You know what
Right.
I mean? That is the key. That's the key. And I think that more people need to resist the FOMO because that's what it is. Oh, if I do this, no one's gonna like me, or they're gonna, I think especially when you bring race into it, they're like, someone's gonna leave a comment. Yeah, they are. There was a comment on my YouTube being like, way to be a race baiter. I was like, block. And I'm still talking about Black women, elevating Black women. I'm not gonna stop. So how do you think this is?
Right.
Some faceless person like YouTube's gonna stop me? What, you're gonna drop, oh, we're gonna send, put like a bad review on Apple? I don't care. Like, this is way above all of this, right? This is like, I don't care. You can't stop this. So we have to be focused. But also, I think the product is way more potent when we niche. It's way more potent. And I think that, you know, everybody and their mama getting the podcast now, which is cool. But you want a way to distinguish yourself not only with content, but also with quality. Niche. Niche down. Also that's the best way for SEO, right? Really get specific about what you're talking about and who you're talking to, so then you can, optimize your titles, optimize your show notes, but more importantly, repurpose that content into blog posts and all these other things. I actually have on my new website a bunch of that happening so that you can be a resource. But if
Right.
you're talking about everything, who are you talking to? Like a lot, the shows that are just friends talking about whatever, like The Read, which I listen to every week. You're not gonna produce another The Read, all right, y'all. Like they've been at it for like 7, 8 years. You're not producing that. I don't want to hear from you and your friends. I'm sorry. I'm not. I'm not listening to your friends. Talk to me specifically about something and really, you know, really sink your teeth into it. Don't be general. Don't be afraid. There's a lot
Right.
of people who are weird or different or whatever. Really lean into it. You will surprise yourself, the people who are interested and the people that rock with you because you're specific, right? I've
Right.
had people be like to me, they're like, do you think you have enough Black women to interview? Don't you think you should widen it to like women of color? I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. And I love and support women of color who live abroad and stuff like that. But like, don't try to play me with this fear
You
like
know
there's not enough Black women to interview. Like, no.
that's an issue. That's a big issue. And I'm not gonna lie, when I started the Black Podcasting group on Facebook that became the Black Podcasters Association, when we decided to go private, um, that was always something, something in the back of my mind. I'm like, this is going to be, I always said there's going to be a glass ceiling at some point, right? Originally, I stopped thinking that way because I'm seeing it open up, and podcasting has become a very big thing in Africa right now, which also means Europe, Southeast Asian. People don't think about that, right? You have connections from people who are abroad, same kind of like you, right? You're still connected through podcasting to stuff here in America, in the US, but you're also living abroad, and it's the same premise if you flip it around, from people from Africa living in Europe and Southeast Asia and stuff like that, where they're going to get jobs or wherever they're going to get education and stuff like that. So it's like there isn't a glass ceiling, but we have to we can't we have to understand too, like people are going to come into here and be like, well, why don't you broaden this for other people? So like one of my biggest dilemma was, well, I I really believe in for us by us, And when we try to do workshops and bring people in, I'm trying to bring Black people in to do these trainings and workshops. But there is always sometimes the question of, well, I'm looking and I can't find what I'm looking for, but this person over here has, will bring value to the group. Like, for
Mm,
instance, we have a book club, and we were looking, myself and some of the moderators of the book club, we were talking one day, and we were all the books we're picking. I'm like, I think we've had like one or two Black authors. I don't
mm,
think we have on our list of any Black authors right now for the rest of the year. And to me, that was a concern because I'm like, there's no Black authors doing books on podcasting, but you can find a ton of them. And if there are, I haven't seen or haven't found or haven't heard of them yet. And I would love if
yeah,
anybody's watching this, if you know any, please make sure you drop in the comments or shoot me a message on our social media or something, because that's something I really want to encourage and I really want to do, because it's just a certain perspective, it's a certain way we talk to each other, certain contexts that we can get from each other. But the fact somebody came to you and was like, would you want to broaden it, and you stood firm, I think is very important. It goes back to what you're saying about knowing who your audience is and who you're talking to.
definitely. And I think, Corey, I think you're perfectly, situated to write a book on Black podcasting, and I think you should, right? You got this
My
whole
plate,
show. You
my
got.
plate is like right up here right now.
I know, but
On the list.
later on this year, later on this year, you repurpose the content. You have a
I
break out an
actually
outline.
I actually have an outline of a book that I started writing, putting together last year. I just haven't had the time to sit down and really focus on it, which is why I'm like, the summertime is going to be the time I gotta, clear some of the stuff on my plate. But yeah,
Get this series, these episodes transcribed, plug a little bit, and then you start getting it together. Like you got it. You have the experience. But I think that's what is really powerful. I think you should lean into it because the thing is that we don't know what we don't know. We don't know like wait, they didn't like Black people are not writing about podcasting. And if you announce that, then people be like, you know what? I have been thinking about writing that book. And we start inspiring each other to do that, you know.
yeah,
So I think standing firm, if I've been thinking about doing a summit and all those other types of things, and I would probably bring in maybe some guest speakers that weren't Black, but these are people who have shown that they are down. These are not just someone who's like, hey, I want to be part of your summit. No.
trying to
Like
be.
they have shown that they are down, right? Like that's important. Like not past allyship. They're like, no, I am for this. I'm with you. This is yes. I'm here to impart knowledge. I think that's fine, but I think that it also is important for us to elevate, people who are in this space that are trying to help and to do the thing, right? I
Yeah,
like you said, like I'm for us by us because I know that we are very capable and amazing, and I know that we put the seasoning on things. That's why everybody likes it. We make it palatable, right? Like that's what we do. So I think it's an amazing opportunity, and I think that's what's fascinating is to put out a call and be like, who's putting out the book? Who's putting it out by the end of the
yeah.
year?
I've
You
encouraged
know,
some of the members in the group. I'm like, let's if you got an idea, put it. Let's I'll like everybody in the group knows I'm always extending myself. If you want to talk, let's sit down and talk. Let's figure this out. And I'm really am going to try it. Or I'm also that's on the plan. It's on the publishing part it's in the works. But
look, I'm writing a book right now, not on podcasting, but like it's a bear. But look, we got to do it because people need to hear our voices. They need to hear our perspectives in these spaces. They got to. We
yeah,
have something to say, and we got to be of service because it's not really about us, right? It's about the people who are searching for this kind of information and they want it from people with our lived experiences that look like us.
yeah. So what's the future looking like for Flourish in the Foreign? What's in the works for 2022, 2023?
I'm gonna finish putting out season 2. Probably do season 3. I'm not sure about season 4 this year. I have some products that I'm launching. It's about this year has been all about developing the systems of sustainability. That's what has been biggest for me because I love this podcast so much, but I've had to have a reckoning with myself. I was like, girl, I can't do all the things because the podcast is growing. Also, my business is growing. It's blessings upon blessings. But I was like, why am I so tired? It's like because we started this, you were in a pandemic, and so this was all that you were doing. You're doing a lot more, and you're trying to be out in the world, you know. So this year has really been focusing on sustainability, investing in health, it's hard for me to even admit and say out loud, be like, I'm looking for an editor, because I feel like, no, I'm the only one that can edit my podcast. I got a certain vision, I like certain things, and da da da. But it has to be sustainable, right? It has to be sustainable for me, for enjoyment, but also for like creativity, because I have other thoughts about different topics to explore, which we'll be doing this season. I kicked off the season with Black Girl Burnout. And people be like, what's that to do with living abroad? It has a lot to do with living abroad. We talked about survivor's guilt, which some of the people deal with going abroad, dealing with identifying burnout and how living abroad is not going to solve it. Like, we got to do some inner work. I thought that was really important to bring to the conversation. We're going to talk about Black migration with a scholar in the next episode. Like, we're talking about different aspects of our stories and living abroad and how we are flourishing. And that's important. But I have to have the systems in place to make that sustainable, the systems in place to get more sponsorships and to do the things that need to happen for it to grow. So that's what this year is about. And also writing a book. So the book is all about Flourish in the Foreign. It is kind of like a guide to Black women living well abroad. And I'm really excited about when it comes out. Writing it every day. We're gonna get it done. We're gonna get it done though, right? So
Yes.
that's what this year is all about. Next year, uh, I have some things in the works that if they come through are gonna be pretty major. So I'm not gonna talk about it now, but like, you know, um, people think that you have to pop off. Like you gotta be Spotify has to crown you, Apple has to crown you. I have done very well for myself just talking to my audience. Like just doing that work, doing that groundwork,
Right.
going to where Black women are and being like, hey, I'm here, let's talk, doing interviews, stuff like that. So, and I'm proud of that. I'm really, really proud of what I've accomplished. And hopefully, all things going well, major news in 2023.
Well,
Thank
you
you,
let us
Corey.
know. Please let us know. We love to celebrate Black podcasters. I love to just let I'm like a Twitter retweet king right now. Like you'll see some, I'm like, oh yeah, let me retweet that. Let me get it. Let me get my audience noticing this. So I think that's dope. Let me know about the book too. Just because it's not podcasting related doesn't mean it doesn't like we read the Stacey Adams book back
Okay.
in March. Some people's like it's not really necessarily a podcasting book, but it is the nature of her book about leadership and stuff like that. A lot of people took a lot of gems on how they can apply that to what they're trying to do, and a lot of it goes to what you're saying and something I really stress to, because I always try to address pod fade, which is when I work with a client, I get them automatically. I start talking about building your team, building your team, building your team, building your team, because myself included. Like I'm doing two editing projects right now. I like to outsource it, but those projects are like special arrangement projects, so I haven't outsourced them. But um, it takes its toll. It's like, well, I got to do this, and then I got to do that, and I got to do this, and I still got to work on this project. When I could just easily say, hey, do this, send me the work, let me okay it, let me send it back to you with whatever changes I need, and here's your money, and I take my profits and I walk away. So, but it is important for time management. It is important for burnout. Um, and I'm glad you said that on here because you dropped a lot of gems tonight, and we're kind of like right there when we talk about certain things. But I think it's important for our all
do.
you guys that are watching and listening, it is important. And you said something important too. Like nobody can edit it like you can, which is true. Nobody can edit it like you can. Some people can edit it better than you can too, though.
Oh, yes, they can, and
Yes.
faster too, and
Yeah.
without so much, uh, because it's our baby, right? So it's like you need someone to be like, no, girl, and actually, you're not going to do the intro every single time. We're just actually going to create an intro. We're going to do this and this. You need it, right? So
Right.
that's part of sustainability. And I understand some people might be like, that costs money. Yeah, because podcasting, it adds up. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that's why an approach of sustainability and niching is how you can become profitable, or you can break even with your podcast, even if it's just covering just software and stuff like that really quickly, right? That's how you get to monetization though. People don't think of it like that. They think like, oh, I need a sponsor to give me money. I'm like, no, you don't. Like, you have to think about it, in my opinion, because I have a little bit of a music business background. My sister actually is mostly the music industry queen. She's an artist manager. But it's like, you want to niche down and you want to cultivate your audience to create leverage. So when the deals come, you can be like, I'm not doing the standard, I gotta have 5,000 episodes or 5,000 downloads. You're gonna give me 25. Da, da, da. I'm not doing that. If you pitch me, I'm gonna tell you what my rate sheet is. You're gonna be like, oh, that's high. And I'm like, well, that's the price. You're like, that's not standard industry. I'm not standard, right? But
And I have
that's
a
because you
very
cultivate your.
and
Go
I have
ahead.
a very engaged audience. So either you either
That's the
want into
thing.
that engagement or you don't.
That's the thing, right? Like, they know what it is. Y'all see what it is. Like, I'm not coming to you. I'm not begging you, right? That's what's so important about cultivating an audience from the very beginning. That's what's so important about getting to know your audience. I had my first Patreon subscriber within a month of launching my podcast. You know what I mean? And I didn't even launch the podcast with the Patreon. It was like, oh, should I? I don't know. Okay, I'll do
Yeah.
it. And as soon as I announced it, they're like, okay, here you go.
What took you so long?
Okay. And I have to, Patreon's a whole different discussion. But, I had a whole weird setup anyway. But like, there, you can't do that if your mind is thinking like, I can only monetize with sponsors, or like, I have to have 10,000 followers on IG, or I have to do. You can monetize now, which can fuel your sustainability for your podcast to scale.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Actually, I used to have people cash out me all the time, but I had to stop that because my account was like, no, girl, you can't do that. So, but I used to have people, that used to be like a call to action. I'd be like, if you're enjoying the podcast, it was like a mid-roll. It was like, if you're enjoying the podcast, tip the podcast, Flourish from Foreign. People would tip the podcast anywhere from $1 to $120. And I was like, okay, right?
That's your
These
hosting
are
fees for
ways.
a year. Like if somebody give you 120, that's for most of people, that's their hosting fee.
And that's what I'm trying to tell people. I'm like,
Yeah.
I monetized very quickly, which gave me the bandwidth to cultivate, a newsletter, get that set up, even though I haven't been really on my newsletter, which I gotta be on it. But like, it
Don't worry,
gives
same
me
here.
you're
Same.
right. And honestly, the newsletter is the goal too, people. From a business strategist, also, like, you convert your newsletter about 20%. So you think about it, right? You have 100 people, you have 500 people, you're converting 20%. And that's usually at any price point. Maybe if you have a premium product, it'll be like maybe 1%, 0.8%. But it's a premium product. That's another discussion for another day. But so you can start doing things that are going to be sustainable for you now.
Mhm.
You don't have to wait, right? You can get a VA. You can get a VA that's abroad. It's a different price point, stuff like that. You could do a lot of different things to sustain you and sustain this vision. But you gotta be in it. It's not just about recording and being like waiting. You gotta get out there and let people know what's up and why they should listen to you. And you need to be, aggressive and assertive about, promoting yourself. You can't wait for somebody to anoint you as the person because maybe it won't come, like maybe it won't. Like I have a really big interview next month, and that is like my first really big interview, meaning like it's on a really big platform and stuff like that. I've had press, I've had different things, but not like I haven't had anything where anybody was like, Christine Flourish Foreign, we choose you. But we still persevere and we move on and we still, I have capacity to invest in the podcast. So it's totally doable. It's what equity,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it gets done.
I think people going back again to managing expectations. People, I love reading autobiographies. I'm a history buff, so I know we were talking about some things before we went live, but it's like when you learn the story of a person, it's like what is it saying? It's like that overnight success was 15 years in the making, right? It's 20 years in the making. So it's kind of like that. You don't just instantly become anointed. Like this, it may seem like it to the general public, like, oh, you just came out of nowhere. Who is this person? But it's been a slow grind of just building and one foot in front of the other, and just being strategic on how to do it. So I think that's important for people to understand, especially in this podcasting space as well. It's very important that you know you I have a background in web development, right? So it's always like you want to scale properly. You don't want to, you want to design your app where this is the best way I can explain. You want to design your app whether it's one person visiting or a million people, but the only way you can do that is you got to build it properly in the beginning. You got to plan it out. You got to write your tests. You got to do all these things that's not the glamorous part of building it, and launching the app. So you got to do that first before you can do that. Otherwise, it'll break and you'll lose your clients, you'll lose your audience. And podcasting is competitive to the point where, like you said, being consistent earlier, right? If you're inconsistent, you're going to lose that person. They're going to find another podcast. The people who listen to podcasts are consumers, and not consumers monetarily, but they like to consume content and information. And if you drop the ball on that, they're going to find a replacement for you. And I think that's important.
Yeah. You become part of people's schedule. Like also, I know this about my podcast. People listen to my podcast on their morning walks on Sundays, or if they don't,
Right.
I've had a couple of people who work from home. They morning walks is when they listen to my podcast. Like it is what it is. You become part of the routine
Right.
and you learn. Yeah.
But Christine, because I know that we have the huge time difference, and you can tell me all day long that it's not going to affect you, but I have to respect it. Um, and I mean, this has been a great conversation. It's been great, and I hope people watching it walk away with some gems. I hope they check out your podcast. Let's talk about real quick. How can people reach out to you? How can they learn more about what you're doing? If they want to be a guest, or if they want to, engage with you and ask questions about living abroad and stuff like that, or some of the, I know you said you had a course and you're gonna, or they want to find out about your book in the future. How could they find out about that?
Yeah, well, one, join the email list, which you can find at flourishintheforeign.com. Also, I have a whole page of resources. I have books, I have guides, I got freebies, I got my course, I got other people's courses, I got different tools that I use abroad, all on the resource page of Flourish from Foreign. So it's a good place to start. I got a free guide. It's called Moving Abroad with Intention. It's an over 40-page kind of journal prompt to get you in the right mindset, right? Because I'm all about sustainability. I don't want y'all going abroad and flailing around and feeling like coming home is a failure, because it's not. It's a choice. But I want you to be able to go abroad and have the experience that you're looking to have. It's a hassle to move abroad. So I want you to go abroad, and I want you to go abroad with intention. And I know it's going to be a new chapter of your life, and I want you to be able to accomplish things that you want. But you've got to get clear about what is it that you actually want. What is actually working in your life, what is not working in your life, how much of that is environmental, how much of that is you, and that's what you're going to be taking abroad. So you need to go ahead and start addressing that, because that's going to be really important. So you can get that guide, it's free. I also have a free guide called Build a Business Abroad, because I'm a business strategist and I help Black women and women of color leverage their talents and their skills into viable and sustainable online businesses that make them financially abundant and professionally fulfilled so that they can go abroad and thrive. So if that's interesting to you, check out my guide. And I also have I have 2 episodes about building business abroad too. So that's really awesome. And I'm actually going to put up the landing page for the book because I think it's part of that kind of preparation. Kind of like launch thing. Like if you don't start putting it up there, you're going to kind of hesitate. I'm going to
Right.
do that so if you want to get any updates about the book, you will soon be able to do that by joining the email list, and I'll keep you guys abreast of that. And if you want to follow on Instagram, which is where I'm mostly active, Twitter, I'm just not a Twitter person. I just be on Twitter reading and being like, oh, okay, so you decided to share that out loud with the world. Okay. So I'm more of an IG person. So follow on IG at Flourish Foreign. I actually have a whole bunch of videos on YouTube. I haven't been super consistent with my YouTube channel, but I'm coming back. I'm coming back soon. Coming back probably in July with weekly YouTube videos talking about my life in Spain because that's what people want to hear about, doing all those types of things. So you can find me anywhere. And if you want to chat with me, you can slide into my DMs, depending on what the question is. I
You
will
know,
answer it or
actually,
not.
you gotta be real careful about putting that out there, but you know,
I may, we'll see. But if
that's
you
not an
really want to like,
invitation for those other slide in the DMs. I just got to put that disclaimer out there.
it is not. And those they stay in the request folder. That's not what this is here for. So, if you have questions about living abroad, you can definitely hit me up. But I have a lot of resources for sure. And I may actually bring back my IG lives. I stopped doing them because you can't really save them and download them anymore. But maybe I'll bring them back so I can have more conversations with all of y'all. And yeah, so you can learn more about it. So I'm available though. Come check out flourishfromforeign.com. Listen to the podcast. The podcast is available on all major platforms. So that's Pandora, that's iHeart, that's Spotify, Apple, everywhere. Worked very hard, especially with that Pandora and iHeart, because they were playing with me for a minute. But
You
they're
made it
there,
onto
so
Pandora.
huh?
You made it onto Pandora.
That took a while.
Yeah,
I feel like I got onto Pandora. I applied for Pandora. I feel like that took like a six months. It took a long time.
yeah. I know there's some
I
people
was
that I
just
know
like,
that's still waiting, and it's been like a year. So congratulations on that one.
woo, you know. So you can find Flourish on Foreign. I mean, we're in Audible, we're in the Amazon, we're everywhere. So
Okay.
listen to the podcast, review the podcast, let me know what you think,
And
and
pass it on if you
yeah,
know anybody who's like, and I just want to say as a man from listening to some of the episodes, guys, check it out also. You can learn some things from it. It's not even though it's mainly for black women, living abroad. I think that if you're a guy and you need a place, a starting point to just learn some things about living abroad and understanding, how that goes, I highly advise you to check it out as well. And share it with anyone you know who's talking or might be interested in living abroad. I definitely encourage that part too.
definitely. I think I'm gonna do the season finale to be a compilation on motherhood and maybe pregnancy abroad, but also raising children abroad. Because I've had so many amazing stories. So if you have kids, definitely subscribe to the podcast. I think I want to make a compilation because when I think about all the ways, one, kids like being abroad or they don't, and how, for the most part, I think all the kids thrive. And these are kids at all different ages, different interests, how they then get launched into the world, colleges, navigating. I have stories about all of this. So I think I'm going to make a compilation for that for the end of the season. So that'll be for everyone. Check that out. See how the kids are doing. The kids are all right though. The kids are great. They're thriving. They're living their best lives. This is what I'll definitely say.
Yeah.
Um, so definitely check out the podcast. And I do got a bunch of compilations. Like I said, dating abroad is, look, you don't got to be a Black woman to listen to those, and it'll raise your eyebrows for sure. It's entertaining. Crazy stories for sure.
Sounds like a whole nother podcast in itself.
Oh, someone should do it, not me. People have been asking me, and honestly, whoever's listening, who has the capacity and who knows what they're talking about, that's an amazing market to actually go into. Dating abroad, the products, the interest is a gold mine. It's not my ministry, so I'm not gonna do it. But I've been trying to get someone to do it because people ask me like I'm a dating coach. I'm like, what? No, let's put together a podcast. It's a market. People need to tap into it. Please do, and then I'll probably have you on my podcast. So someone needs to do it.
That's dope. All right. Do you have any last words of inspiration or anything you want to say to the audience that's watching or that will be watching this in the future?
I just want to say that just keep going, keep going, and like seek validation from yourself first and foremost. So make sure that you're putting out content that you're proud of. Don't compare yourself to other people. That's hard, right? People come into the space, maybe they try to do something similar to you, maybe they get news articles, they do whatever. Look, we're all human. You may feel a certain kind of way. I have felt a certain kind of way. But the
Mm-hmm.
thing is that what's for us is for us. And don't ever discount that. If you're putting out great content, if you know your audience, you love your audience, you engage your audience, trust that. Trust it. Because people could have, they could get featured or whatever, and they're not monetized. You know what I mean? Or they don't have the engagement or what have you. So trust your creativity, your product. Really concentrate on putting out quality content and being true to your vision and to your audience. And of course, support everybody Black and root for everybody Black. That's a given though. We always root for everybody Black here.
Definitely, definitely. And I typically like to end the show on these two questions. I mean, you've pretty much expressed it throughout this conversation, but what does it mean for you to be a Black woman in podcasting and I'm gonna make it twofold to be a woman and a black podcaster. So you can just match that together. A black woman, a woman black podcaster, whatever. You know what I'm trying to ask you?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's refreshing because I'm not asking for someone to validate my voice or my ideas or to choose me, pick me. I created my own lane. I created something that I want to listen to. I don't care if nobody else wants to listen to it, right? I don't care if it's not mainstream or like, does it have to be like, yeah, it has to be about Black women, period. That's what I want. So for me, it's very empowering. And yeah, that's what it means for me to be a Black woman in podcasting. Is I say what I want to say. I say it with my chest. And I'm not looking for validation from anyone else. And I love that about this medium. I go straight to the audience. I go straight to my guests. And look, if people outside of my demographic enjoy it, good for them. They have good taste. Like you have excellent taste. But like I'm not seeking validation from, anyone. I don't and that I think that's what's really powerful about this time on podcasting. I know everybody wants to get a Joe Rogan deal. Okay, yeah, that's a lot of money. But like I find it refreshing that there are no gatekeepers for me in doing what I want to do and speaking to who I want to speak to and to tell a story that I want to tell. But it's also because of how I navigate the space too. I'm not looking for somebody to choose me, pick me, or anything. You know, they're coming along and they getting hip with it, and they're like, "Oh, this is yeah," because it's been lit over here. Like I know that. So for me, being a Black woman in podcasting is just empowering. I'm doing me. I'm very confident in that. I'm very confident in the stories. I'm very confident in the quality, and I stand on it, 10 toes. You know, I don't have any insecurities about it, and that's really powerful for me. And I hope everyone else feels that way too. And if you don't feel that way, stop looking outside for validation. Go inside for validation. Put out quality content. Get to know your audience. And, do the ground game that way. But that's what this is really beautiful about this medium, and especially at this time. I know a lot of things are changing and stuff like that. A lot of companies trying to get in on it, but they don't know what they're doing, so they keep on fumbling horribly. I was like, okay, you guys could fumble and give me a contract. At least I can help you, but whatever. They're like, just spend all this money like with these people who don't know what they're doing, and I'm like, okay, you can pay me, I can help, but you know, just stay encouraged, but also validate yourself first and foremost.
That's dope. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think this was a great way to end season two of the Spotlight with all these gems that you dropped. So if you guys are watching, make sure you check out Flourish in the Foreign podcast on all major platforms. If you go to the website, sign up for the newsletter. Definitely sign up for the newsletter. Support the newsletter. Check out the resources. Um, just check out the episodes as well. And it's a great podcast. It's great. It's very well produced. And for somebody who took time to edit and stuff, I'm like, you did a very impressive job to me personally. I'm like, oh, I like the flow, I like how you did things. So check out the podcast, Flourish in the Foreign. Christine, thank you again for being here. This has been a wonderful experience. We should definitely stay connected. Make sure you guys reach out to her if you have any questions about living abroad or about some of her upcoming projects, the book, and some of the other coursework that she has out there. And if you're watching this overseas, I guess I'm going to assume your business is overseas as well, right? Or is it global? Is it international?
I have clients all over the world.
So then,
Right
yeah.
now, a lot of my clients are US based, but I've had clients all over the world. So,
So yeah, so if you want to learn about more about her business and what she does, make sure you check that out too. I'm all about promoting what everybody's doing. So if you got a business, I promote it.
come on, come on. And thank you so much, Corey, for the opportunity. It is an honor, and I don't take it lightly when, people create platforms. It takes work, y'all. I don't know if y'all really understand. Like, producing a podcast, working, creating something like this takes work. So I deeply, deeply am grateful to you for creating this. I appreciate it. I hope that you recognize how much you deeply appreciate it. And I'm always down for collaboration. So if you need anything, you let me know.
Definitely. Well, guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for checking out the Spotlight. Tonight was our season finale of season. I mean, season finale of season two. That's so redundant. We'll be taking a break for the summer. However, make sure you check out both seasons one and two of the Spotlight right here on our YouTube channel. And if you're sad that you have to wait for season three, don't worry about it. We're going to be bringing other content during the course of the summer. We have a actual panel coming up for Pride Month with some members from our group, where they're going to be talking about what it means to be LGBTQ podcasters in this space and why their voices are important. So it's going to be a great conversation. We have Anna Deshawn from the Q, Ray J from Q Points podcast, and he was out in the comment section tonight. Reggie, one of our members from Reggie's Expression. So they're going to have a great conversation. That's going to be on June 6th at 7 p.m. You can subscribe to the channel, tap the notification bell so that you can be alerted when that happens. But we're going to be rolling out some other content over the course of the summer. So make sure you subscribe. And again, Christine, thank you. If you're interested in if you're becoming a member or learning more about the Black Podcasters Association, please make sure you go to blackpodcastassociation.com and you can learn about what we do there, as well as follow us on Instagram, Twitter. We're on all social media platforms as well. So with that being said, Christine, thank you for being here, and we will be talking again soon.
Yay, thank you.